What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock and what you should be looking out for the future. I'm also going to break down what the news, data, and technicals are telling us about the overall market, and also for Tesla and how this may affect the share price. Some very important things that Warren Buffett said that's super important, and also what the data is telling us about the collective market and Tesla moving forward. Before I break anything down about all this information, however, before I talk about what's happening with Tesla's share price, in my opinion, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last thing is, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed up to 5 free stocks, each worth up to $2,000. And the best part is any could be a free Tesla share. The offer ends in just 1 week. Check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. So Tesla had a pretty good day as I predicted on Friday. Tesla was up 5.5%, closing at a little bit over $170 a share, and overall it's looking quite nice. But the real question is what's likely going to happen to the markets in Tesla, and what's this MACD actually telling us as Tesla is quite overbought right now. But first, I need to talk about some other important things. Now, Tesla's looking overbought, and so are many different stocks out there that will affect it, from like the S&P 500 to the QQQ and the Nasdaq, even the Nasdaq 100. And what I'm seeing is there's some weakening momentum right now as the market was very overextended, pushing up so hard on Friday. I did warn you guys about this, by the way, on Thursday. I was seeing many signs of a short squeeze, and that is what happened. And now that this is happening, I do believe the market's due for a bit of a pullback, and I do think the market needs to do that in a very healthy way. But it's not the end of the world. It's just going to be a very slight pullback before we do see more bullish momentum later on into the end of Monday, if not by Tuesday. And then we're going to get a big reaction after CPI. Now, I will give you guys more context about the charts, especially for Tesla. As you can see, the momentum is weakening on the MACD, so Tesla is due for a slight pullback. It needs to cool off its RSI, so it is going to come down just a bit, but it's going to bounce later on, and it's going to once again pump even higher later on. But first, like I said, let me just talk about some other important factors. Looking at SPY, max pain for tomorrow is at 408, also 409 for Tuesday, but it is at about 410 for Wednesday. We have a 1.56 put to call ratio then, but the very important thing to note is we don't have way too many puts or calls expiring, or options in general expiring for the first 4 days of the week until Friday. So I guess these numbers don't matter as much, but the market makers might consider them, at least to some degree. But what they do tell us is that in the beginning of the week, as there are very few options expiring, the market makers are likely going to be able to let the market pull back. This was very different from the situation we had on Friday. So for the market makers, it's okay for them, right? Max pain's at 408, not too many puts. It's okay for them. Now, on top of all of this, don't forget that in the beginning of the day, we have like Six Flags and just a couple of earnings. By the time the market closes tomorrow, we have PayPal, Palantir, and many others. For Tuesday, we have Airbnb, Rivian, Nikola, and many others as well. And then for Wednesday, in the beginning of the day, we have Roblox, Wendy's, and a couple of others. But the big day is going to be after the market closes when we have Unity and also Walt Disney. So make sure you watch all of those. Thursday and Friday are just not as big, in my opinion. They're just not as many huge earnings. But the big days are going to be Monday and Wednesday, as we have Walt Disney and also PayPal earnings. Make sure you're ready for that. As far as data goes, there's not a whole lot going on for Monday and Tuesday. Monday, we have some inventory data, nothing too huge, some consumer inflation expectations. Once again, not too massive for the markets. But for Tuesday, we have some crude oil data coming out and just a couple of things like that. Nothing too massive. But Wednesday is when things go crazy. We have CPI, we have core CPI, so crazy data. The market's going to make a massive move. The market might pump very hard, or the market may crash off of this. My opinion of the market is that for the super short term, in the beginning when we open, we're going to see a bit of a pullback. But once again, there's going to be a nice balance and the market's going to pump. But that's maybe more, once again, for the short term, the market's going to eventually pump even more. But for the medium term, right, by next week and beyond, I would say for the last 2 weeks of May, if not depending on CPI, I am anticipating downside for the stock market. I will explain this more on the charts in just a few minutes, but I just want to warn you guys, okay? Yes, the market could pump more, but we could be forming a bull trap. We may be in the process of forming it. Yes, there could be more room for upside later on, but there's likely going to be a rug pull coming over the next few weeks. I want to warn you guys about that. This tends to happen during most Mays of the years. And also, there's a lot of data suggesting we may not get the best CPI. I will talk about that in a later video, though. Now let's talk about Warren Buffett. Now, some bullish news for the stock market was Berkshire Hathaway basically announced their earnings, and they did actually see a big increase of 12% in the first quarter. Their cash position went up by about 130 billion in total, so a really, really big increase in that. They have about $8 billion, which is their total profits compared to before, which is a 12% increase. Very, very awesome news for them. Profit from insurance underwriting came up to about $911 million, which is very big compared to the 167 million a year ago. So very impressive from Berkshire Hathaway. Very, very strong earnings. And Warren Buffett did make some very big claims too during the earnings meeting with the shareholders. He also mentioned that it's important to have cash during times like these. He did defend his position on that. And they mentioned that there are some capricious events in these markets, but Warren Buffett's not losing faith in many stocks such as Apple. He also mentioned that uh, they're not going to be acquiring Occidental, in particular, like energy companies, like some investors were hoping for. But once again, what's good news is Warren Buffett has praised CEO Tim Cook. He said that Apple is an incredible company, it's very dominant. They actually have about a 5.6% stake in Apple, and they could even buy more. Warren Buffett mentioned that Apple's a very strong company. It's their best company that they're holding, and he implied that he's very bullish for the longer term of the company, which was good news for the market. So we got some very good news. But now let's talk about Cathie Wood and Elon and also some news affecting Tesla before I talk about the charts. Now, Cathie Wood mentioned that the innovations to AI are unlikely to fix the banking crisis, but the crisis, which is not over yet, is another sign that the Fed has gone too far in her opinion. So many investors ask why we are optimistic, and her view basically, the equity and fixed income markets are discounting lower interest rates plus for innovation. But the bottom line is, she still said that the banking crisis is not over and that the Fed has gone too far. Elon Musk said absolutely he agrees with Cathie Wood. And yes, you could make that argument. However, the Fed is in a very, very dire situation. I mean, they are saying they have to keep waiting on data. Many would argue that they should have paused already. That's what Elon Musk is saying too. I personally am not looking at every single piece of data in a very meticulous manner, so I'm not going to really say what my claim is. But I do want to note that what the Fed is doing will have very longer term consequences. And it takes quite a while for the real rate hike effects to be shown in the economy. And I think there's a very valid argument that could be made in favor of what Elon Musk and Cathie Wood are saying. And Elon Musk does believe, as I mentioned before, a severe recession is coming. And he believes the Fed has gone too far because there's too much latency in their data. I agree with that. I do agree that he's right about that. And I think there's a very good argument, once again, that could be made that the Fed should have paused much earlier. Now, what else is very interesting is Tesla's teased another very, very beautiful looking color known as the Midnight Cherry for the Model Y. It looks very nice in my opinion. It's very sleek in design. It looks very, very beautiful. And I think this could actually incentivize more and more investors and people to buy into Tesla, to buy these cars, because with more colors, it offers a lot more options. And I just think that this is a beautiful color. More people are likely going to try buying it and when these updates come. Now, on top of that, we have another FSD update that came out. This is very, very important for us because as Tesla gives us these updates, it helps them improve on a day-to-day basis. So there were improvements made to the different sectors. I'm not going to go into specific details about them, but automatic emergency braking, reverse camera, parked visualization, lots of improvements have been made to the interfaces and also the camera settings. And on top of that, there are other things like they're renaming the vehicle in the app. You could actually do that. Very, very cool. And other things like that, such as the speedometer. Very, very awesome updates. I'm very happy about this. Their air suspension and which music choices you want to favorite. Very, very awesome. Very nice for customization. I think investors will love it. And so will many Tesla owners. As far as the inventory levels go, Tesla saw its inventory levels drop like crazy as the temperatures are going up and more people are buying cars. And we're getting very close to Memorial Day, so we also tend to see more cars being bought up during times like these. So that's very good. We did see a slight increase in inventory levels, but it's very slight, and they're still well below where they used to be. So that's a very good sign for Q2 earnings. Now, what else is important is the volume on Tesla is pretty good, not too far from the average volume, not horrible, not the best either. And their short volume, I think I just skipped it. It dropped by about, what is this, about 8%. That's a good sign for Tesla. A little bit less shorting dictating the volume. Price price ratio is bouncing here. That tends to be a bullish signal for Tesla. And we're getting some buy ratings from different investors. Looking at the chart right here, we can see we're holding up many of these important EMAs. And compared to SPY, Tesla's been holding up quite nicely. It's another good sign. Lots and lots and lots of intraday volume right around this 165 area. Also, 170 saw a little bit more price action, but 167 was a very important area. That's where Tesla like shot up after it broke 166. That was a good sign for Tesla. Very, very nice to see that happen. And now, when it comes to the daily previous historical data, we tend to be green at 53% of the time on Mondays and about 51, a little bit under 51% of the time on Tuesdays. So on one of those days, I do believe Tesla's going to pull back first, but it could get a nice bounce either as soon as like Monday, if not by Tuesday. A nice bounce should come. And I'm still very confident in how Tesla's going to improve. May tends to be green only about 54% of the time for Tesla, so not the greatest of months, but not a horrible month either. It tends to do a lot better in June. That tends to be one of Tesla's stronger months. So we'll see what happens. I think approaching June, we might see some downside in the markets though, but the market could bounce, of course. Not saying it has to crash. I'm just talking about a very healthy pullback. The short interest has been very flat, only about 19 million Tesla shares shorted just a few days ago. And I didn't really see any big headlines coming out that were too massive for Tesla, other than some news involving like Lucid. We got another buy rating for Tesla, but some sell ratings over the last couple of days. Once again, pretty balanced. We're seeing more selling back in like April, but for May, pretty balanced. So that's a good sign for Tesla. So now let's talk about the charts. I'm going to be very brief in this video, by the way. All right, so for Tesla, here's what I'm seeing. I believe Tesla's going to pull back, like I said. Hold on, give me 1 second. There we go. I think my chart just got adjusted. Okay, so Tesla's going to likely pull back just a little bit as the MACD is weakening. We're very overbought, and I think the market's going to dictate it. Once you see SPY and the QQQ, it's going to make more sense, and also the VIX. Tesla needs to cool off and might retest 168. If that fails, maybe we could see 166 getting retested, but then a bounce around that level, very close to where the 200 EMA happens to be. And on top of that, when you look at Tesla, it's been forming a really, really nice looking inverse head and shoulders like structure. So it is going to likely make an attempt for more upside later on. I just think that it's going to likely try to cool off first. That would be very healthy before it continues to push higher. And it could come all the way down to either 166 to about 168, somewhere around there, and then try to bounce. And then it could bounce as soon as Monday and just try to start pumping near the end of the day. Or by Tuesday, right, we might see Tesla make an attempt to push up even higher and retest 170. And I believe very soon it's going to break 170 and make its way up to about 174.5 by the time we get to Tuesday, right? So that's what I'm seeing, a bit of a pullback first and a nice bounce and a push up, it dropping, then pumping later on. And then we will react to CPI after that. But for now, that's what I'm seeing on Tesla. I will break down more details in just a few minutes on Tesla, but let me talk about other stocks as well. For SPY, I'm seeing something very similar. The reason for that is the MACD is weakening on SPY, and we also have a possible inverse head and shoulders like formation. You could even argue it's kind of like a cup and handle, but whether it's a cup and handle, or like an inverse head and shoulders, this is telling me we might actually gap down a bit, maybe just cool off. The RSI, very, very healthy, of course. MACD is telling us we have some weakening momentum as we're getting closer to a crossover on the PPO. So that tells me that the SPY or the S&P 500 are likely going to cool off a bit. We might retest 410 or so, maybe even 408, somewhere around there, hold it, then get a really nice bounce by the end of the day on by the time like time progresses on Monday after a couple of hours, if not by Tuesday, a really nice bounce and a bullish continuation. And then we should get closer to that 415 gap fill. And I think that's very likely to come. The market just might get a very healthy pullback first and then get the pump. But I just want to note that this is just a short-term prediction. For the medium term, I do believe that even if we pump to like 415 to 417, there's still downside to come later on into May. Okay, but I don't want to talk too much about that just yet. Let's just focus on the shorter term. Small drops and one more pump for the short term, and this could be the final big pump before more volatility. For Coinbase, I'm seeing the same thing. I mean, it's losing momentum on the MACD. It's overbought at 75 for the RSI. It needs to cool off to about 55 to 56, then try to bounce off that and try to push up to like 60 later on by the time we get to Tuesday. The dollar is pretty flat. I think the dollar is going to try to push a little bit more. It almost formed like a double bottom like formation. Should try to bounce just a little bit, try to retest this 200 EMA, get a little bit closer to about 102. And that might be correlated with the market cooling off a bit, and then the dollar might just continue to trade sideways, helping the market pump. NEO needs to cool off. It's already getting a crossover on the MACD. It's going to likely come down to about 7.9 or so, maybe a little lower, and then try to bounce later on. By the time we almost close by Monday, if not by Tuesday, we might see NEO bounce. Very, very healthy price action. Same thing for Microsoft. It's going to likely come down as we're losing momentum right here. Retest the 50 EMA this time and retest like 307 or so. Then hold this level. Try to hold it. We have a chop zone between 307 to about 303. So 307 is going to be the next support. 307 is going to be support. It might try to bounce off this and then push, and we'll see how it goes from there. For the QQQ, it needs to cool off for sure because the RSI is almost at 70. It has lost some momentum. Should cool off to about 320 or so and then try to bounce again and then try to make its way up to about 324.5, if not 325. All right, so cool off first and try to bounce for the super short term. For the medium term, I am a little bit more bearish, of course. I do believe we're going to see downside in the markets approaching mid-May into late May. But before the downside comes, we could get one more big pump. How is it going to play out? We cool off first, and then the pump comes a little bit after that before more volatility comes. The VIX is down over 14%. That tells me the VIX is going to try to bounce just a little bit. It might try to retest like the 50, if not the 200 EMA, come a little short, maybe get a little closer to like 18, then fail. So, and then it's going to come down to fill the gap and retest 15 to 16. What does that tell me for the markets? It tells me the VIX might bounce a little bit, right? So the stock market might initially come down, as I was telling you guys about Tesla coming down and many other stocks. And then the VIX might reject, right? Because there's not a true confirmation of a bounce. It might just be an attempt and it may be a failed attempt. Then the VIX might come right back down to fill this gap right here. And then the market's going to pump later on, right? So this tells us the stock market might drop, then pump over the next couple of days. That's what I'm seeing. And finally, once the VIX is down to like the 15 level, it might form a bullish divergence. By mid-May, approaching June, the VIX is likely going to get a big bounce and fill this gap up here to 19, make its way back to the 20s. Lots of volatility will increase for the S&P 500, which tells us the VIX will come down, and it's going to come down because of the market. I'm sorry, the VIX is going to pump. Sorry about that, guys. The VIX will eventually pump later on, and the stock market will come down by mid-May, approaching June. Okay? So once again, market drops. The stock market may drop as the VIX tries to bounce. VIX comes down as the market tries to pump over the next couple of trading days. The VIX forms a bullish divergence. The VIX starts to pump later on into like mid to late May, and the stock market is going to come down. I hope that's kind of clear. I know it's a little complicated, but Amazon, I'm seeing something similar. It's going to cool off a bit, retest the 50 around this 104.5 to 104 area, then try to bounce off the 200 and make its way up to 106 to 108 later on. Then that could be the top for Amazon, forming a top in this process before it gets more downside. Nvidia needs to cool down. It's very, very overbought. 76 is where the RSI is. It's going to likely come all the way back down to 280 first and then try to bounce from there. Be very careful with this. It's not necessarily a best buying opportunity for Nvidia. It's still very overextended. It's just going to take a while before this thing does start to drop, right? It's taking quite a bit of time. Apple is going to likely come down, maybe retest 70, then try to bounce. It's going to likely chop around a bit and trade a little sideways, but it could get a pump later. So after it drops, it tries to bounce off like 70 or so and push all the way up to like 174 to 175 again. And it's going to start chopping a lot, trading in this range between 175 to 170 before we see Apple decline by mid-May. So that's what I'm seeing for Apple. For Google, we're likely going to see something similar. Google cool off a bit to 104. After it cools off, get a nice bounce, push up to 106 to 107, maybe a little bit higher, and then this thing will end up getting a rug pull by mid-May. So a drop, pump, then one more bigger drop later on. I think that's very likely for the market. For Meta, it came down like I predicted. It's very overextended, of course, but it looks to me like it's in a very important balance zone. Since it's holding the 200 EMA, it might retest this 200 around this 230 area, maybe drop a little lower, then try to bounce. We might see Meta actually outperform a little bit and retest 235 later on. Finally, the 10-year Treasury yield is not really doing too much. It's just holding up, not really doing anything too significant. So I'm always open to what this thing could do. But I just want to note that it's been trading with the market. That's very ironic. It tends to not do that. And that's telling us that the Fed's policies are affecting it in a way that it's correlated with the market instead of being inversely correlated. Now, if this thing comes down to fill this gap, maybe it's going to drop with the market in doing so, but it could be forming an inverse head and shoulders like formation and then get a bigger bounce to fill this gap. Typically, this thing would drop if the market pumps, but so far it's not doing that. So if it does pump, maybe the market pumps with it, right? Very, very ironic. So to end the video, let's talk about Tesla. Now, the really bullish case for Tesla would be a break above 172. If it breaks that, then 174.5 should come. If it breaks that, then we're going to fill the gap for 178. Bearish case would be a break below 170 to retest 168. If that fails, there's 166 to 165. Now, the thing about Tesla is I'm kind of in the middle in a way because I am seeing this thing maybe pulling back a bit to either 166 to 168, and then this thing should bounce, and then later on, maybe by the end of Monday, if not going into Tuesday, it should push up again and try to make its way back to 170, which it could break, and it might just try to keep going even higher this time, get a stronger break to the upside and hit 174.5 and many levels like that. So I am seeing Tesla eventually pushing up. I think it's going to likely do that. I'm just not sure if it's going to break 174.5. I mean, if it does, it's going to try to fill the gap above. The gap is going to be like right here where 178 happens to be on the daily chart. That's very important to look at. So we have this gap way up here around 178. It could fill the gap, but you have to watch 174.5 first before it does that. We have this possible inverse head and shoulders like formation too. Might come down a little bit first and then just try to complete it. That's very possible for Tesla. We have a strong daily candle, so it's very nice to see. We have a potential crossover on the MACD. So I do think Tesla's going to try to push up very, very soon. Might cool off first and then push up later on and hit some of these very important supply zones and start to attempt to fill this gap. All right, so that's what I'm seeing for Tesla. A cool off first to cool off its RSI and then a push up later on, either by late Monday, if not approaching Tuesday. I think Tesla's going to try to fill the gap. Make sure you watch 170, break that, then there's 172, break that, then there's 174.5. If it breaks that resistance, it's going to most likely try to fill the gap again, come very close to doing that to 178. All right, guys, so that's what I'm seeing. I gave you guys my prediction. Cool off, then a pump after that. And please have an absolutely incredible weekend. Remain calm, cool, and collected. Stay safe. And don't forget, I have some merch for you guys if you're interested in buying anything. Look around the comment section. You should be able to see it. If you want to buy a cap, a hoodie, a tank top, or t-shirt that says "To the Moon" or things like that, it's just an option I have for you guys if you're interested. Thank you all for listening. Have an absolutely incredible weekend. Tesla to the moon because the long-term future is still incredibly bright. And peace out.